Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Glad you could join me as we venture into the fields, the forests, the waters, and the prairies, behind a good dog and maybe alongside a good friend or two. This week, we're going to go a little deep into the weeds on one of the organizations and their testing system. There's a new test in the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association pantheon of testing. It's called the Gun Dog test, and it replaces one that, well, just didn't get enough love. We'll talk to the organization's director of testing, Dan Wittman, about its relevance to bird hunters, the components, the goals, and how it's going after a first test season. Whether you're a part of the organization or not, there will be something there that will be of value to you in terms of getting your dog ready for future seasons. Our Fix-It segment this week, I'm going to suggest that sometimes when your dog is not he's not doing what you want to do. It may not be disobedience. It could be something far more basic. Food for thought there. And then on our social media, I found a great picture, and I thought, let's just share some thoughts on a picture like this and how it works. So if you had a long day in the field, you got tired dogs, sore feet, maybe a heavy hunting vest, what do you do as you're admiring that view? As always, the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, and HiViz sights. Well, I don't know about you, but this time of year we're taking lots of pictures, enjoying lots of time in the field, and I'm always wondering, someday, well, maybe I wrote a piece for some magazine about what you do after the hunt. So I found a great photo of mine. It's a scenic. The foreground is basically desert, but there is a big tree in the right side, and then an incredible sunset. I'm a little colorblind, but to me, the sunset colors in this one up against a kind of a variegated system of clouds is orange and gold and a little bit of pink in there, I bet. And then in the vast distance beyond, it's a little mountain range that we visited on that day. So I asked what you do after that long day with a good dog and a tolerable hunting partner. What's next when you're admiring a view like that? And I really enjoyed the suggestions, if I could call them that we all might consider when we're relaxing after a nice hunt. Steve Zirkle, should have known you'd come up with this. It's a good one. Venison summer sausage on the tailgate with some bourbon and beers to toast the day. James McConnell, campfire, burgers on the grill, sipping on maple-flavored bird dog whiskey. Okay. While scratching the dog's ears. Yeah, that makes it even better, doesn't it? George Gomez, thank you, George, for the compliment. It's a good picture. Yes, I appreciate that. Just got lucky. And I appreciate yours too. Kind of an asymmetrical sunset, and maybe that's what makes it so arty. You might know where that is. Anyway, for you, the way to end your hunt with 3 buddies and dogs, back of the truck, crack open a beer, and admire the sunset in Big Sky Country. Lynn Glock, beer and dog kisses. Boy, that is a celebration. Grant Goblish, Beam and Coke. Yeah, I get it. On ice, of course. Colin Farrell, looking forward to tomorrow. Yeah, already looking ahead while relaxing, reminiscing about today while having my best hunting partner by my side. More than likely asleep and dreaming the same. Yeah, and trotting alongside in their dreams. And then Ben Waters, praise the Creator for what he has done. All good ones, love it. Yeah, I joke about it, but I don't joke about it. Why we go? all the things that happen during the day, but all the things that happen on the fringes of the day as well. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts on that. That segment of the Upland Nation podcast brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. Remember, if you've got a side-by-side and you'd like to, try some better choke tubes, Scott Trulock has said he will personally help you. If you don't want those, extended chokes for aesthetic reasons, they'll make you a set of flush chokes at no additional charge. Just call Scott. Go to TrulockChokes.com. Get the phone number. Call Scott Trulock. Tell him what you're looking for in 20, 28, 410, or even a 12 or 16, I'll bet, if he's got the materials for it. Give him a ring, and he'll take care of you. I know he will. He always does me. And sageandbreaker.com is where you get all your gun cleaning and gun care stuff. Big news, the gun grease is back in stock, as are some of the shell casings. That's the wrong word. The shell box, the leather shell box, it's now back in stock, as are all the other bore cleaning solvents and CLP, the spray-on that I use every day after a hunt. You want to make sure that you're in on it when things are coming down the pike, or if you need something in particular and it might have sold out, sign up for the mailing list. Go to sageandbreaker.com, sageandbreaker.com. Well, to me, it was exciting. The North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association revised their testing protocol to a degree, for the better, in my opinion, but I'll leave that to you and your judgment after we talk at length to the Director of Testing for NAVHDA, Dan Wittman. Dan, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I can't wait to get your insights. When I heard about all this, of course, it was kind of in the midst of the whole decision-making process, but changing the testing system is not an easy task. Let's start, though, with a little bit of background. Why don't you give me a little bit of just a short NAVHDA history? What's the organization about, so that people can get acquainted with us?
Our organization really is a chapter organization at the ground level. We have oversight with an international, which the reason it's international is because we're in Canada and the United States. And they have oversight of the chapters, but at the chapter level and the local level, we really try to emphasize helping people train their own dog to whatever level they want to compete at or also hunt at. And that's what drew me towards this organization when I first started. Everybody is helpful. There's not really a sense of competing against each other, because when we're testing our dogs, we're testing our dogs against a standard score and not each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that drives a lot of help across the board, because when you show up at a test, everybody, wants their folks to do well. And then after testing season, most NAVHDA members get together with each other and go hunting. And so it just comes full circle as to, why we put the time in the summer and in the spring for the fall season.
Yeah, and that's what, of course, attracted me way back in 1988, and still not as active as I used to be, but still active. The other thing that we might point out to everybody is we call them hunt tests as opposed to field trials, because the criteria for the tests are a little bit different than maybe some of the field trial organizations. They're all good and they all have a purpose. But I think to a large extent, the reason is in the title of the organization, North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. Would you elaborate on the versatility aspect just a moment, and maybe touch on some of the breeds that are eligible for this organization?
Sure. the pointing breeds are the breeds that are eligible to participate in the testing of the dog. Now, the pointing lab has become popular. So we do have some pointing labs in the chapters across the country. However, they're not considered a pointing breed, so they wouldn't be able to test, but they train with us and they compete more on the AKC side of things.
Yeah.
But for us, it's waterfowl retrieval and also field work where we're hunting upland birds. And in association with that, we have an element of, how well the dog is handled in the field and listens to you. And then we simulate in various levels at various testing levels, the retrieval of like a crippled bird. So the dog has to do some sort of tracking. So, the healing, that kind of thing, if you're approaching, let's say, a duck blind, you don't want the dog to spook everything off the water before you get there. So that's part of the obedience side.
Yeah.
We're looking at, does the dog have the desire to do the job they're being asked? So those things are also looked at, but it's primarily waterfowl retrieval and being in the field with finding and pointing and retrieving shot upland game.
And therein lies the versatility of the dog breeds, and to a great degree, some of these breeds are pretty obscure. Everything from poodle pointers to the Épagneul, Breton, and everything else in there. Let me just, if anybody out there wants more information, it's real easy. NAVHDA.org. You can even look at the entire testing structure there, and if you're smart, you read all that before you go to your first natural ability test. I got a story about counting testicles at our first NA test, and I don't want to relive it ever again. Maybe you have one like that as well, Dan. What about yourself? What kind of dogs you're running, and what are you doing these days?
Well, I'm kind of lucky in regards to being able to do a lot of hunting. I work in the finance and insurance industry, and back in 2010, I became a remote worker. So I was able to buy a trailer and travel around during hunting season and go different places to follow waterfowl and birds. And I live currently in Arizona. I'm from Buffalo, New York. Go Bills. And that's where I got into NAVHDA. I currently have 3 pointers. Some people still refer to them as English pointers. I have 2 German short-hair pointers and 1 Vizsla. So a little mixed bag, and they all have their primary purpose as far as their personality and what I like them for. For instance, the Vizsla is a very fine-boned Vizsla. She weighs about 33 pounds.
Wow.
And in the desert chasing quail, she's like a camel. She doesn't really drink a lot of water. So when it's hotter out, I choose to run her and one of my other smaller pointers. The best waterfowl dog I've ever had is a bigger pointer. She's retrieved geese, ducks all over the country. I just came from New York. I went home for a family reunion, and we got to do some goose hunting with their nuisance goose season. So she was retrieving geese. I keep putting in for a swan permit in Montana, and I've had a couple of opportunities to get a permit, but I would love to have her retrieve a swan. Like that would be the ultimate for me in regards to waterfowl, and to have a pointer, which a lot of people don't think are good water dogs, do something like that, because I just think that it goes along the lines of what NAVHDA is all about. It's exposure and using the methods that a lot of the people share. Sometimes things don't work, but with a big community like this, you have lots of opportunities to tap somebody on the shoulder and say, hey, what should I try? And over time, for myself, I have built up a training program based on everybody that I've come in contact with, and take little bits and pieces from that. So, that's kind of where I am. I've I joined NAVHDA in 1995, and my first chapter was the Finger Lakes chapter in Buffalo, New York. I became a lifetime member in 2001. Like I said, my job kind of moved me all over the place. So I moved from Buffalo to Bozeman, Montana, and coming out west, I just love it out here. The big open grounds. I went on a hunting trip with a bunch of NAVHDA friends of mine, and we went to Missouri, and we hooked up with a farmer that at 2:00 every day, during the quail season, he would quit farming and he would take us out quail hunting, and he never did any training with these pointers that he had. And what sold me on the breed was he just hunted them, and I was hunting with him, and you can picture an old farmer. He had overalls, that's all he wore, and he had just shooting gloves because he didn't want to get cut with the thorns and stuff, some of the terrain that we were in. But I saw all three dogs, one dog on point, one of his dogs on point, and two dogs backing all naturally, and that's what sold me. So shortly after that, I got my first pointer, and then I was judging a dog in Arizona, and it was a Vizsla that was just really killing it with covering ground and pointing. And I walked up to the owner after the test and just started talking to him about it. And he said, I still have one female on the ground that no one has decided to purchase. And so that's how I got my Vizsla.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, but some great stuff. First off, nuisance goose season ought to be called the goosance season. Second, to hear waterfowl retrieve and pointer in the same sentence is a little bit uncommon, although I do have a great story there. In fact, it was on a TV show I made years ago. It was hilarious. And number three, what you've told me is basically maybe not as clear to some people as it is to you and me, and that is this organization, including all the judging and almost everything else. Yeah, we have somebody running IT, we have an executive director now, but this is a volunteer-led organization. And, you guys who judge deserve gold medals, among other things, for doing that. People who go to a test are astounded at, number one, how many miles you walk in a day and how many miles you probably traveled to get there to do this for all of us. So thanks for all of that. That's Dan Wittman. He's the Director of Testing at the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. I'm Scott Linden, the host here at the Upland Nation podcast. Pardon me. We're here to talk about this testing program and specifically what I'll call the, kind of the middle ground. We have a test for young dogs called the Natural Ability Test, and that's essentially what it is. We have a big, what I'll call final exam for most dogs, and we call that the Utility Test. In between, we used to have a test called the Utility Preparatory Test, and it was basically a watered-down utility test. So if your dog, and I saw it happen, if your dog was not quite ready on test day for the utility test, you'd opt to go UPT instead. Dan, that all changed, and it was a process. Why don't you elaborate a little bit on how and why we came to the decision to change that to what we're now calling the Gun Dog test?
We started looking at the data that was presented, and for instance, last year in 2024, the utility prep test had about 118 entries during the course of the year, and that's about normal. It ranges 103, 118 in there year after year after year. Unlike the natural ability test and the utility test, which are standalone tests, they have their own criteria and people gear their training towards that test. The utility prep test, like you alluded to, was a stepping stone test. And in looking at what the different attributes of the test. It was so close to the utility test. What I always heard was, well, I'm going to train for the utility test. I'm going to skip the utility prep test because it's so closely related. So number one, number one, and at the annual meeting in 2024, we brought this up. I presented a lot of the data that was in the annual report. We had a discussion, and we thought that we should, tap the membership to see what they thought. Our goal was, could we make this test a standalone test? Lots of people out there gear their training and their dog work towards hunting. So the utility test obviously is a fantastic, gun dog when it's trained and prizes in that test. But not a lot of people, get to that level. We would lose a lot of people after the natural ability test because that wasn't important to them. Their main focus was put the groundwork in at the natural ability test and then gear themselves for hunting. So we had two kind of situations. People would just disappear from the chapter and they'd never see them again after the natural ability test, or they would remain chapter members and be active and help out, but they never tested their dog in utility because that just wasn't important to them.
Look, can I just interject here? Because many of us have utility tests as the goal, but it is, as you said, an arduous regimen. I mean, there's a lot of water work involved, and for many of us, that may not be what we need. Yes, we should all have a dog that will retrieve from water, but this went well beyond that. And there are some other things that maybe we don't need as much in the field if we're hunting a dog most of the year, whether it's dry ground or anything else. So that becomes, like you said, a real deterrence to testing again. So carry on.
Right. Okay. So we, first of all, had a lot of good input from the Executive Council in regards to this. The committee that we have that looks at new chapter applications, they brought up some good points that maybe not everybody considered. So in regards to the utility test, a lot of the chapters did not have proper duck search water. So it hindered them in handling a utility test. And then I deal with this a lot because I get people call me about maybe changing test dates. There's state and province and also, federal regulations that limit, like, you can't release a live duck at certain times of year. You have nesting season at certain times of year. So you're limiting some of these chapters to the availability of duck search water because you need, you have to have at least a 3-acre pond, based on the rules. But obviously we want something bigger than that. That's the minimum. So there's all these things that come into play in getting a group of people together from all over the country to discuss this, because there's some things I'm sure that other people didn't realize. There's drought conditions. We ran into this situation out west where the test really isn't scheduled until they make sure that there's proper water for the duck search. You have all these things coming into play besides the actual membership themselves. So then we took the different elements that we came up with based on like the chapter side of things. Then we went to the membership and started asking them. We also sent a questionnaire out to all the judges to ask them to give us their input. So the managing director of the organization, she holds president meetings once a month for the president chapters or for the chapter presidents, and she started asking them. So we took all this information and came back and started going through it, and eventually had a discussion at the 2025 annual meeting. And, we also had the judging and testing committee kind of outline what they think should and should not be included in this test, the gun dog test. So we took all that stuff, discussed it for quite a long time, and came up with the final product at the annual meeting in 2025 and kind of rolled it out to the membership. And I have to say, the response has been fantastic.
Well, I can't wait to get into that. You've got some numbers for us, as well as we'll get deeper into what the gun dog test entails in the second half of the program. So stick around for that. That's Dan Wittman, Director of Testing for the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We'll have more on that. Our Fix It segment is coming up later on in the podcast as well. Is something else causing your dog to disobey, such as it is? That'll all be along directly right after a couple words from our sponsors, including Pro Plan Sport Dog Food. Hey, they're a NAVHDA sponsor too. Thank you, by the way. Purina Pro Plan Sport.com is where you learn more about their the science behind the nutrition. And I brought this up before, but I know I was going to cut this podcast today, so I paid attention again. I feed my dog twice a day. When I feed him, I watch him eat. And if you don't think that is one of the more enjoyable aspects of their meager existence, besides hunting and being with you, well, then you need to watch a little more carefully. It is a highlight of your dog's day. Make it count. Your dog needs nutrition that performs as hard as they do. And the concentrated nutrition in Pro Plan Sport dog food optimizes oxygen metabolism. Say that 3 times fast. In a human jock, we call it VO2 max. It's the same for our dogs, and it increases their endurance during exercise. Like right now, this part of the year. Get it? Learn more at ProPlansport.com. And I just heard from my good friend Andy McCormick over at Legacy Sports. They're the folks who bring you pointer shotguns. A new shipment of Acreus over and unders is now coming down the pipeline. Pointershotguns.com is where you'll learn more about their entire line, including the case-colored, the Cerakoting, all the sub-gauges, always in stock. You know, there are hundreds of independent pointer dealers, plus you can always find them at the big boxes, Bass Pro, Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, Turner's Outdoorsman. Learn more and find a nearby dealer at pointershotguns.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, and that is Dan Wittman on the other end. Dan is the Director of Testing for the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. We've laid a pretty good backstory, Dan. Can you tell us a little bit about what is in that brand? Well, it's not brand new. We're going to talk about numbers in a minute. Tell me what are the main components of the new-ish gun dog test?
It has the same areas of focus as the utility prep test, but there's just a little tweaking that we put in there. So the water portion, you're still healing. You still have to be steady to the blind. So, the dog enters the blind, the hunter enters the blind, the dog is positioned next to the blind, and a duck is thrown from a winger, or if somebody's out in the cattails with a kayak and a shot is fired, the dog has to bring the bird back to the handler. And the difference between, let's say, utility as far as the retrieving for the whole gun dog test is that the dog has to bring the bird to, relatively close. And, that's probably, I'd say, within a step or two. The aims and test rule book says within a step. Mm-hmm. So we're looking, and that's to get a full score of a top score. So you're looking to have the dog retrieve the bird and bring it back so it can be put in the bag. So, within a step or two. And the field search is pretty much the same. You're looking for the dog to be deliberate, productive, handle in the field, and work with the handler in regards to finding game and positioning the gunners so the dog can retrieve a shot bird. And again, the retrieving requirements are the same. Steadiness, this is where I think, we have people in the hunting world, we've talked about this quite a bit. The dog has to be steady through the awareness of the handler, so that would be the pointing phase, then the flush of the bird and the bird taking off to wing, and the dog can break once the shot is fired. So, we're updating the test book to make that a little bit clearer. So the dog needs to be steady through steady to wing is how it's worded. So one of the good things is we're getting a lot of feedback from people when they are reading the language for this test, and maybe giving us some updates as to making it a little clearer for people to understand. So
sure,
we always accept that and try to update it so it is very clear to the individual that's testing, what they're being judged on. Again, this portion has something to do with like a wounded bird, where there's a 50-yard drag of a dead duck, and the dog needs to bring that duck back to the handler. The drag is out of sight, so the handler at the furthest point where the duck is, the dog cannot see the handler, and that's to judge not only the dog just tracking and bringing the bird back, but obedience because the dog is on their own. So that's another portion of the field, and then like there's areas that are judged throughout the whole day and all the different aspects of the test. And it's, is the dog responsibly using their nose in order to find game, using the wind correctly, checking obvious areas that might hold birds, the different cover, pointing, we want the dog to be staunch on point and, give a posture that definitely is indicating that there is something there. Again, steadiness, we covered, retrieve a shot bird, bringing it within, the step or two of the handler. And then, like I said, the drag is very similar with bringing it within a step or two of the handler.
What you've done, and it's gone a long way toward getting a lot more people involved, I'm sure, and we'll get to those numbers in a minute. But what you've done is you've created an opportunity for folks who want a really good, and I mean this in the best possible way, a really good meat dog. This is a dog that will perform at a high level, higher than most dogs probably. But it's practical stuff. And as you've probably seen, and I've probably seen, and I probably said it and exhibited it a million times, most folks, most times, don't need a dog that is steady to wing, shot, and fall. They want that dog on the bird because the bird might run, or some other reasons. The pheasant hunters are big on that in particular. But there are reasons to have a dog that maybe doesn't stay steady to all of that. And I've had NAVHDA people, judges included, say, we insist on that for our test, but when we go chukar hunting, our dogs break at the shot because we don't want those birds running away or whatever. So really liking this in terms of an all-around everyman's gun dog test. What's been the reaction from the people taking the test, Dan?
It's been very positive, and I meet with the executive council every other month, and then also I'm on the judging and testing committee. Uh-huh. So we meet quarterly, and everyone has had positive things to say. I've judged 7 gun dogs so far this year in the tests that I've judged. So it's a lot. It's a lot more popular than the utility prep test, and I think we've met the goal that we set out to make it a standalone test. You alluded to that with pheasant hunters. I feel the same way with hunting gambles.
Yeah,
I want my dogs on that bird because I consider them little pheasants, and if you don't kill them clean, they're running, and a lot of times they'll tuck in a hole or something, and you'll never find them. So there's instances where you want that to happen, and hunting sharptails, let's say, I don't want my dog to move because not all the birds go out at once for the most part. And so if that dog moves, it might spook a bird that you might be able to shoot if you're able to have the dog stand there and get a little closer. So it's, every circumstance is different, and every person has the way that they like to hunt. So again, getting back to, we want this to be a standalone test and not something that propels them to the next level. Certainly could go on to utility, but to say you got a prize in the gun dog test is a serviceable hunting dog no matter where you go in the country, no matter really what you hunt, because of the different aspects that I just went over, as far as what the skill set would be.
Yeah, I love all that. And if you're lucky, your Gambel's quail goes into a hole instead of under a cactus.
Right.
But you just illustrated that very, very well for all of us. And, the fact of the matter is, if we got a well-trained dog and we got him trained at that highest level, that utility level, we can always release our dog early and go after those running pheasants or anything else. Unless you miss as much as I do, then it's not as big a problem. It's all about the numbers, and you've got them. NAVHDA is one of those data-driven organizations. We can look at pedigrees. We can look at dogs' test scores. Tell us a little bit about how well received it has become from a participation standpoint.
I was surprised because we're not through the testing year. We still have quite a few tests on the books through the end of the year. I think right now our last scheduled test is the second week of December. But compared to all of last year, the utility prep test had 118 entries. And the gun dog test, and I pulled this information yesterday, we have 293 dogs that have run in this test so far this year.
Wow. So easily we're going to see triple the amount of participation. That is just remarkable. Yeah. And it tells us a lot about, number one, the responsiveness of the organization. Number two, the need out there for something that serves most of us most of the time for most of our dogs. Have you run a dog in the gun dog test? I know you said you judged some, but have you run any?
I ran a dog in January before the annual meeting. I was running in California, and I think I was the last person to run the UPT test. So I have not yet run a gun dog yet. Getting back to the numbers, what I think is interesting is that the breakdown is very similar, even though we're approaching triple the amount of entries when you're looking at the percentage of male and female.
Oh,
so there was 134 male and 159 females that have run gun dog. Now last year, it was almost 50-50, similarly. So that's pretty much the same. And then the span of dog, which I thought was something interesting. So, which again is very similar. So the utility prep test in 2024, the youngest age that ran was 1 year old and the oldest was 10 years old. And for the gun dog so far this year, The youngest was 1 year old and the oldest was 11 years old. So very similar, but just the amount of numbers of dogs is the difference.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the age span because this is not an age restricted test. You can run any dog at any age in this test, and that's kind of one of the other things I like about the gun dog test. I know it's true for the UPT as well, but these are people who may not even have been in the organization when their dog was young enough to take that natural ability test, but here we are with another opportunity that gives them a chance to be involved. And again, you know, there's room in this world for every kind of test and field trial, and I've been to them all, and I've run many of them. This one, well, the NAVHDA organization in general is founded by hunters to prepare their dogs to be better hunters. And if you go to NAVHDA.org and start looking at the test criteria, you'll see what I mean. But it creates an all-around dog that I think everybody really wants. What did you see in the testing? Is there a difference in first off how you look at these dogs? Second off, how they work and how their handlers work in a gun dog test versus a UPT?
The retrieving is more defined now.
Okay.
So that's looked at a little bit. The major difference, as we kind of alluded to earlier, is there is no duck search anymore. You know, that you have the duck retrieval, and getting back to what we've talked about as far as most hunters, they are looking for the dog to bring the ducks back. The tracking portion is on land, so we don't have the duck search anymore, and I think that what we talked about earlier, the water accessibility and all that kind of stuff plays into it. So that's why I believe that this is geared towards, if you waterfowl hunt with your dog, this test certainly, training for it is going to give your dog the skills to be a good waterfowl hunter, a good upland hunter. When we're looking at the different percentages, the percent of no prize for the gun dog test year to date is 25%. And then 18.4% have received a prize 1, 27.3% have received a prize 2, and 29.4% have received a prize 3. So the max score for the gun dog test is 168. The most, we have indicators, scores 1 through 4, 4 being the best for each category. And then depending upon how we think the actual skill set is important to the test that you're running, there is an index. So for instance, search is, the multiplier is 5 because it's very heavily weighted in this test. Use of nose is a 6, very heavily weighted. The desire of the dog to complete the task that's being asked, whether it's water or the field, that's a 5. And pointing, which again, we're looking for dogs to point game, that multiplier is a 4. So you can really see how being able to find game in the search, the use of the nose with the wind and then the desire and pointing, you got a dog that does well in those categories, you're going to have a great hunting dog.
Well, and that's exactly right. We don't need to get too much more deeply into the weeds on the scoring system, but the bottom line of this is, and all of the judges are well aware of this because they're taking workshops and clinics and learning all of that as well. The bottom line is the things that are important to a gun dog, well, at every level in a NAVHDA test, are important to the judges, and they are judging accordingly. Thank you, by the way, so I think we've pretty much covered the new gun dog test. If anybody wants more information on that, go to NAVHDA.org. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Dan Wittman is the director of testing for NAVHDA. He's also a bird hunter, and I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about that stuff right now in our remaining few minutes together. Dan, as this is recorded, you're in Montana where it's too hot.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm going to Idaho. But how's your season going so far?
It's going well. I drove from Phoenix to get out of the heat and went to New York and was able to do some goose hunting for the early goose season. And then from there, I drove to Montana. Interesting story. I used to live in Bozeman, Montana. I took a job out there back in 2001 when I was training my first two NAVHDA dogs, and there was an individual that lived out in Missoula and had a dog that was a litter mate to my dog and invited me out there. And it's funny that NAVHDA got me out west, and I've lived out west ever since. I've lived in 7 different states and enjoy it out here a lot. I've been coming to Montana to hunt since 2001. Missed a couple of years, but when I lived in Texas, I drove the 33 hours to come here. It's my favorite place to go. I love sharptail hunting and I love waterfowl hunting. And this weekend, the waterfowl season opens up out here. So I was building the finishing touches on my blind yesterday, and there's lots of geese and ducks. And, my dogs are handling the heat a little bit better up here currently, hunting huns and sharptails because they are from Phoenix, but I'm using all 6 of my dogs every day, in order to get into birds. We're putting a lot of miles on. It's, in my opinion, just from what I see, there's a lot of nests that the eggs are still intact and never hatched.
Wow.
And and that's very unusual. And I know that the drought really hammered the grasshoppers. There weren't a lot of grasshoppers, and talking to some of the farmers, and I think that's probably played that drought and the down ripple effect of that, I think has really hindered the population. However, what's funny, and it's because their hatch is different, I am seeing quite a few pheasants. So, the drought maybe hit the huns and the sharptails a little bit harder than the pheasants because of the timing. They don't hatch at the same time.
Well, we don't think about those sort of things, but it's absolutely true. And I'm glad to hear that because maybe sharptail and hun season won't work, but we'll get something out of it in Montana and maybe some other places too. I've seen that in the desert here, for example.
Yeah.
We're all about dogs. NAVHDA is an organization put together by dog lovers who care for their dogs as much as they do for most of their children, probably. Not their spouses, honey, if you're listening. We still care for you the most. Tell me a little bit about keeping care of your dogs, whether it's hot weather or during the season in general. Are there things you do with nutrition and conditioning, or maybe even foot care that most people are surprised when you do them and they say, hey, I'm going to start doing that?
Well, getting back to what you were talking about earlier, I feed Pro Plan also. And I've always fed Pro Plan ever since I joined NAVHDA and learned about it. And I've talked at some of the annual meetings. I've spoken with some of the vets that they've brought in that are employed by Purina. So I really like the product. As far as foot care goes, I think that for me it's a little bit harder because getting ready to hunt out west, it's so hot in Phoenix, and I do a lot of swimming with the dogs.
Yeah.
So a lot of kayaking, but but the major lakes in Arizona in the summertime, they're still like 90 degrees, and so they can get heat exhaustion in the water.
Wow.
So I kayak and have them swim out in front of me. I do drive up to Flagstaff and try to get him out there running around as best I can. But I had my first dog and learned how to rode the dog off horseback.
Yeah.
And ever since then, every dog I got, that dog taught the next dog, taught the next dog. So they pull me on a mountain bike. They pull me on skis. I love when they pull me on skis. It's fantastic. It's so silent, in the snow. Having them rode off ATV, that kind of stuff. But the mountain biking in Phoenix, if I get up early enough before the sun comes up, I can usually get all the dogs done before the sun comes up, and that's really what I do, outside of the swimming until I get to an area that's cooler. So, like I said, I was in New York, and I ran them quite a bit getting ready for the trip out here.
Well, that's good information. During the season, especially early in the season, you say you're rotating all 6 dogs, which is great. Some of us don't have 6 dogs, and we're relying on 1 or 2. Is there anything we can do? Number one, be mindful, of course, of heat exhaustion or anything else. But do you do anything during the hunt, besides hydration, for example, to keep your dogs cool?
What I learned over the years is I used to just be gung-ho, and I take breaks now and sit under a tree, whether the dog, is stopping or not. I had a close call once where the dog's blood sugar dropped really low, and that really, made me think. And so I will just hang out under in the shade under a tree and let the dog recoup. I check their pads every time I get back to the truck, especially, down in Arizona, I'm checking for cactus. Even up here, there's a little bit of cactus.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My dogs are pretty used to it. They run around it. But the other thing too, which I don't know that a lot of people look at, is I used to depend on the farm and ranch book. So each county up here in Montana has a landowner book.
Sure.
And once Onyx became popular, I try to go where there's water within the hunt so that they can, if I can see something where there's a tank, or I know that there's cattle in where the tank is going to be. I never really looked at that before, but I try to incorporate that now within the route that I'm going to take for the hunt.
Yeah.
So I'm not having to carry a ton of water with me all the time, that I know that there's going to be water there. And that's usually where, we'll take a break. I know there's a lot, like some people use Pedialyte, some people use things like that they put in the water for their dogs in order to help them. An old timer, I was chucker hunting in Idaho, and he had that brown corn syrup that he would dissolve in the water.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. I think it's like Caro syrup or whatever. Just to give them a little bit of sugar in the water. But I think that whatever you decide to do, if you can incorporate some kind of water within the route that you're going to take, you can always take 10 minutes, 15 minutes there, relax, let the dogs calm down, let them soak in the water a little bit. If it's really hot, you got to be smart. In Arizona, as soon as half my water's gone, I'm heading back. I don't chance it.
Yeah.
I do have the people that know me well. They know this dog. I rescued a pit bull when I first moved to Phoenix, and she thought she was a bird dog, and she would carry she would walk next to me while I would quail hunt, and she was able to carry an extra gallon and a half of water for me in her saddlebag.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is great.
And that way she was going with me, and the other dogs were going. We were able to hunt longer. It worked out really well. She was a fantastic dog. We did a seminar, I remember, with Tim Clark, who's a judge out in Delaware.
I know Tim. Yeah.
We used her to retrieve the bumpers because, like I said, she went with training with me every weekend, so she knew how to retrieve, and she would hike next to me. She was not gun shy at all when I shot, so it was pretty funny.
Oh, that's great. And inspiring. There is hope for pit bulls, among other things. That's Dan Wittman. He's the Director of Testing for the North American Versatile Hunting Dog Association. We have covered the gun dog test, newish gun dog test. If you need more information on that, go to NAVHDA.org. It's easier to say than to type. Take my word for it. And you can open the testing and aims booklet or whatever it's called now. Anyway, learn for yourself.
Each program test rule.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You'll find it. No problem there. Dan, insightful stuff. Good on you. I know shepherding this whole thing through the process was long and probably thankless in many instances, but keep up the good work. We sure appreciate it on this end as a member. And thanks so much for enlightening us and being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Well, thank you. The Judging and Testing Committee and the Executive Council really worked hard, and I think that we hit a home run with this. The members are, they're the judge and jury, right? And so far, the response that we've got has been great, and the numbers prove it. So really happy because I really wanted this to happen, and I'm glad that it did.
Well, so am I. And maybe someday I'll actually find room in the calendar to take one of those tests. Thanks again for joining us. Dan, have a great season.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
And the rest of you, stay tuned because I'm going to offer up a suggestion on why your dog might be, well, at least to you, disobeying. And I'll suggest, first off, that that's not what it is. It's coming up after a word from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. Yeah, if you're looking for a Browning shotgun, they've got many of the hard-to-find models in all the gauges. There's a lot of emphasis in the gun room at Mid-Valley on sub-gauges. You want to learn more, go to midvalleyclays.com, poke around in the gun room, see what they've got. Lots of field-grade guns. If you don't see what you want, call Dave Fiedler. He can probably get it for you. Yeah, any style, any gauge, any brand, Dave should be your first stop when it comes to buying a new shotgun. Go to midvalleyclays.com, shop the Browning selection, see what they got, see what you want, and then give Dave a call. midvalleyclays.com. And see what you've been missing with a HiViz sight. Now, the website is HiVizSights.com, and you can shop the entire selection of interlocking light pipe systems. I said interlocking, and that's really the key. You can switch out the colors. You can move them from shotgun to shotgun very easily. Most of them are mounted with magnets. They stay on, but when you want to move them, you can put them on your new shotgun, wherever you got it. You'll never lose the bead while you're following the moving target. It works for me, and it'll probably work for you. Well, let's fix one of these breakdowns in communication this week on the program. Many years ago, we pioneered dog cams, if you will, and I was revisiting that recently for another TV network, and it reminded me of something that you may not have thought about. But in addition to putting a camera on some of my dogs, of course the camera had a microphone, and you'd watch the playback on some of this stuff, and besides getting seasick from watching the screen, your ears hurt when you were done because it is really noisy down there at dog level. You know, everything from brush to collar tags, or worse yet, a beeper or bell. All of those things, plus a panting dog, mean he may not be able to hear you. So if you're giving commands and he's running along through, say, a heavy thicket of dense stem popple cover for your woodcock hunt, well, there's a good chance you think he's disobeying. He's probably not. He probably can't hear you. So develop some hunting strategies for communication as well. I think you'll both be happy. It could be hand signals, could be a whistle. Sometimes it's as simple as yelling his name first so he actually does pay attention to you. Whatever it is, it's probably not disobedience. It's probably he can't hear you. Hope that helps you two get along better during your next noisy hunt. Yeah, so thank you, Dan Wittman. If you all want more information on the new gun dog test at NAVHDA, go to NAVHDA.org, NAVHDA.org. Sure appreciate the insights, and thank you for your hard work on that one. Everybody else who was involved, again, hat tip to you all. If you will please comment, leave a rating or a review at Apple Podcasts. I will thank you in advance for that. Thanks to our sponsors who make it all possible: Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, and HiViz Shooting Systems. You know, if you missed something here, it might be in the newsletter. Sign up for that by going to findbirdhuntingspots.com. Just scroll down, sign up, we'll get you on the list. There's always something every other week in there, including some of the podcasts and some of the short films. Well, I appreciate your listening. I hope you're having a great season. I can't wait to trade notes with you the next time we cross paths. Until then, I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.